Hello again. This is Dr. Reginald Yawnsworth, and tonight we're reluctantly exploring one of history's most transformative and brutal epochs, the Iron Age and the rise of empires that would reshape the ancient world with fire and sword. A story of technological revolution, religious upheaval, and the birth of civilizations that still echo in our modern consciousness. We're traveling back nearly 3 millennia to a time when iron was the new bronze, when great prophets walked among kings, and when the very concept of empire took on dimensions that would have terrified earlier ages. So settle in, perhaps adjust those pillows, and let me know in the comments where you're listening from tonight. Are you in Israel, where Solomon's temple once gleamed with gold and cedar? Or perhaps in Iraq, where Assyrian palaces still bear the scars of ancient sieges? Wherever you are, dim those lights and let's drift back to around 800 BCE to witness the forging of the world in iron and ideology. Tonight's story isn't just about conquest, though there's certainly that. It's about how superior technology reshapes not just warfare, but the very fabric of society. It's about the Assyrians who perfected the art of terror, about Greek city-states learning to fight as one, and about the emergence of monotheism in a world still crowded with gods. It's about how iron plowshares fed larger populations while iron swords carved out larger kingdoms, about the birth of philosophy in marketplace conversations, and about how alphabets began to democratize knowledge that had once belonged only to palace scribes. This is the story of humanity's coming of age, bloodier and more complex than childhood, marked by the first stirrings of the ideas and institutions that would define Western civilization. It's about the moment when our ancestors discovered that iron, unlike bronze, could be found almost anywhere, and with it came the realization that power, too, might be more democratic than anyone had dared to imagine. Chapter 1. Dawn of the Iron Nightmare. Welcome to the Iron Age, roughly 1200 BCE to 500 CE, when humanity discovered that iron was stronger than bronze and immediately used this knowledge to make everything exponentially more violent and miserable. Congratulations, you've just woken up in ancient Gaul around 200 BCE, and you're about to discover what happens when technological advancement meets the same old human capacity for making life unbearable. Your bed is a straw mattress on a wooden frame, which sounds like luxury until you realize the straw is home to an entire ecosystem of biting insects. The wood is rotting from moisture, and the whole thing smells like the inside of a barn that's been sealed for 6 months. There's no pillow, just a rolled-up cloak that's damp from your own sweat and whoever used it before you died. You wake to the sound of iron being hammered in the distance. The metalworkers are already at their forges, creating weapons that will kill more efficiently than anything the Bronze Age ever imagined. The air is thick with smoke from a dozen different sources, cooking fires, metalworking furnaces, and the general haze of a civilization that's learned to burn everything but hasn't figured out ventilation. Your house is made of wood, stone, and mud, with a thatched roof that leaks when it rains and provides nesting space for every bird, rodent, and insect in the area. The walls are thin enough that you know intimate details about your neighbors' lives, marriages, and digestive problems. Privacy is a luxury for rich people, and even they don't have much of it. The floor is packed earth covered with rushes that haven't been changed in months. They're supposed to absorb spills and odors, but mostly they just create a breeding ground for parasites and a mulch pile of rotting organic matter. Walking barefoot means stepping on things you don't want to identify. Could be food scraps, could be something worse. Your family sleeps in one room because heating multiple rooms would require more fuel than you can afford. Grandparents, parents, children, and probably a few animals share the same space, the same air, and the same collection of diseases. The elderly cough all night, the children cry when they're not coughing, and the adults just lie there contemplating whether this is really better than being dead. Getting up requires courage because the morning air is cold enough to freeze your breath, and the fire died sometime during the night. you need to restart it using flint and steel. A technological advancement that still requires skill, patience, and luck. Strike wrong, and you'll be eating cold porridge and shivering until someone else gets their fire going. The good news? Iron tools are stronger and more durable than bronze ones. The bad news? They're also sharper, heavier, and more effective at accidentally maiming you during routine tasks. Welcome to the Iron Age, where technology has advanced, but human misery has simply found new, more efficient expressions. Chapter 2. The Daily Constitutional Crisis. Time for your morning bathroom break, and if you thought Bronze Age sanitation was bad, the Iron Age has managed to make it worse through the simple expedient of having more people crammed into smaller spaces, all producing waste at an industrial scale that would make a modern sewage treatment plant weep. Your toilet is a wooden bench with a hole in it, positioned over a pit that's shared with several other families. The pit is supposed to be covered with dirt occasionally, but mostly it's just a festering hole in the ground that attracts flies, breeds disease, and produces odors that could be weaponized. The bench itself is splattered with the evidence of previous users' poor aim and questionable digestive health. Privacy doesn't exist. The latrine is a communal facility where conversations happen, business deals are struck, and gossip is shared while everyone sits shoulder to shoulder, trying to ignore the fact that they're all participating in humanity's most vulnerable moment together. There are no doors, no walls, just a row of holes over a pit that's definitely too shallow for the number of people using it. Toilet paper is still a fantasy, so you're working with moss, leaves, smooth stones, or the time-honored tradition of using your left hand and hoping for the best. The left hand is considered unclean in most cultures, which makes sense when you consider what it's used for. Washing afterward involves water if you're lucky, or just wiping on your clothes if you're not. For those living in larger settlements, sewage systems exist, but they're basically open channels running through the streets, carrying a delightful mixture of human waste, animal droppings, kitchen scraps, and the occasional dead animal. These channels flow directly into rivers, wells, and whatever water sources the community depends on for drinking and cooking. The wealthy might have private latrines, but they're still basically holes in the ground with better ventilation. Roman-style toilets with running water exist in some places, but they're rare and expensive. Most people make do with chamber pots that get emptied when they're full, which is never often enough. Disease spreads through fecal contamination faster than gossip in a small village. Cholera, dysentery, typhoid, and intestinal parasites thrive in conditions where sewage and drinking water mingle freely. Everyone has stomach problems, digestive issues, and the constant low-level fear that their next meal might be their last. Public health is a concept that won't be invented for another 1,000 years. Communities deal with waste by hoping it goes away, dumping it somewhere downstream, or just accepting that life is supposed to smell terrible, and everyone is supposed to be slightly sick all the time. If you're traveling, roadside facilities consist of bushes, trees, and the hope that nobody comes along while you're conducting business. Inns and taverns provide chamber pots or designated outdoor areas, but cleanliness is strictly bring your own standards. The one advantage of Iron Age sanitation is that everyone has the same problems, so there's no shame in digestive disasters or poor hygiene. When everyone smells terrible and has stomach problems, it's just part of the shared human experience. Chapter 3. Breaking your fast and probably your teeth. Time for breakfast, and the Iron Age has made some improvements over previous eras. The food is still trying to kill you, but now it's more efficient at it thanks to better storage techniques and trade networks that allow exotic diseases to travel further and faster. Your morning meal consists of porridge made from whatever grains are available. Wheat if you're lucky, barley if you're not, and oats if you live in a place where even the plants are trying to survive against all odds. The porridge is thick, lumpy, and flavored with whatever didn't crawl out of the grain storage containers during the night. Mice droppings, insect parts, and mold spores add protein and excitement to every bite. Bread is available if you can afford it, but it's made from flour that's been ground on stone mills, so every loaf contains enough grit to sand down your teeth. The grinding stones wear down during use, adding rock dust to your daily diet. By age 30, most people's teeth are worn down to the gums from the constant abrasion of eating bread that's basically edible sandpaper. Your drink is ale because water is still trying to murder you and everyone knows it. Iron Age brewing techniques have improved slightly, but the beer is still warm, cloudy, and full of sediment. It tastes like liquid bread because that's essentially what it is. Fermented grain mash with enough alcohol to kill some of the bacteria, but not enough to make the taste bearable. If you're wealthy enough to afford meat, it's either dried to the consistency of leather, salted until it's basically a salt lick with meat flavor, or fresh enough to still be crawling with parasites. Preservation techniques have improved, but refrigeration is still 2,000 years away. Fresh meat spoils quickly and spoiled meat kills slowly but surely. Dairy products are a gamble. Fresh milk goes bad within hours, cheese develops interesting colors and textures, and butter becomes a breeding ground for bacteria. Most dairy is consumed fermented, not because people prefer the taste, but because fermentation kills some of the harmful microorganisms that would otherwise kill the consumer. Eggs are seasonal and often partially developed. Nothing like cracking an egg and finding a partially formed chick inside. Egg storage involves hoping they don't go bad before you eat them, and telling good eggs from bad eggs requires senses that have been dulled by years of eating questionable food. Vegetables are available when in season, but they're often small, tough, and bitter. Cultivation techniques have improved, but fertilizer is still human and animal waste, which means every vegetable comes pre-seasoned with intestinal parasites and bacterial infections. Root vegetables are safer because they're cooked, but leafy greens are basically salad bars for every parasite in the area. Fruits are luxury items that spoil quickly and often contain insects, worms, or toxic molds. Apple maggots, cherry flies, and various other larvae turn every piece of fruit into a protein surprise. Honey is still the only sweetener, and it's expensive enough that most people never taste anything truly sweet. Food poisoning is a weekly occurrence. Botulism from improperly preserved meat, salmonella from contaminated eggs, and various bacterial infections from spoiled food are just part of the dining experience. Most people spend at least one day each week dealing with food-related illness, and many die from eating things that seemed safe at the time. Cooking methods have improved slightly, iron pots are more durable than bronze ones, and cooking fires are better controlled. But food safety is still a matter of luck, prayer, and a strong stomach. Temperatures are judged by experience, timing is guessed at, and proper cooking is whatever doesn't kill you immediately. Chapter 4. Fashion Disasters of the Iron Age. Time to get dressed, and your Iron Age wardrobe consists of whatever hasn't rotted, been eaten by insects, or fallen apart from constant wear. Fashion in the Iron Age is less about style and more about having enough fabric to cover your body and protect it from the elements that are constantly trying to kill you. Your basic outfit is a woolen tunic or linen shirt that's been woven on a loom by someone who learned the craft from someone who learned it from someone who might have known what they were doing. The fabric is coarse, scratchy, and dyed with colors that run when wet and fade when dry. The dyes come from crushed insects, rotting plants, and mineral deposits that sometimes contain toxic metals. Pants, if you wear them, are loose-fitting and held up with rope or strips of leather. Fitted clothing requires tailoring skills that are rare and expensive. Most clothing is essentially rectangular pieces of fabric sewn together with whatever thread is available, wool, linen, or sinew from animals that didn't survive the winter. Underwear is a luxury that most people can't afford. Those who can afford it wear linen undergarments that are washed infrequently and shared between family members. The concept of personal hygiene is limited to not smelling worse than everyone else, which is a low bar to clear. Your shoes, if you own any, are leather sandals or boots that have been cobbled together from whatever animal hides are available. The leather is often poorly tanned, still retains the shape of the animal's foot, and offers minimal protection from rocks, thorns, and the general hostility of the ground. Most people go barefoot and develop soles like leather, picking up every parasite and infection the earth has to offer. Socks don't exist, so your feet are either bare or wrapped in cloth that quickly becomes soggy, smelly, and home to various fungi. Foot rot is common, and losing toes to frostbite or infection is just part of life in climates where winter means your extremities are constantly at risk. Outerwear consists of cloaks made from wool or animal fur that haven't been properly cleaned or treated. They're waterproof in the sense that they eventually become so saturated with grease and dirt that water can't penetrate, but they also become heavy, smelly, and home to every parasite that enjoys warm, dark, moist environments. Cleaning clothes is a major production that requires water, soap made from animal fat and ashes, and time that you don't have because you're too busy trying to survive. Most people wear their clothes until they disintegrate, then hope they can afford replacements. The wealthy might have multiple outfits, but even they're dealing with the same basic problems of fabric that shrinks, colors that fade, and clothing that falls apart under normal use. Your body is constantly itchy from rough fabrics, insect bites, and various skin conditions that thrive in an environment where bathing is rare and clean clothing is rarer. Everyone scratches constantly, and fungal infections are so common that they're considered normal. Rashes, sores, and open wounds are just part of the human experience. Accessories are limited to whatever you can make or trade for. Jewelry is made from iron, bronze, or precious metals if you're wealthy enough. Leather belts hold up your pants and carry your few possessions. Hats are functional rather than fashionable, designed to keep sun, rain, and insects off your head rather than make any kind of style statement. The wealthy dress better, but not much more comfortably. Fine fabrics are still scratchy by modern standards, and elaborate clothing requires servants to help you get dressed. Rich people might have silk imported from distant lands, but it's still worn over bodies that are infested with parasites and marked by poor nutrition. Chapter 5. Dental Hygiene. The Iron Age. Smile of horror. Time to show off that Iron Age smile, except you probably shouldn't because your mouth is a disaster zone that would make a modern dentist run screaming from the room. Oral hygiene in the Iron Age has advanced slightly from previous eras, but advanced is relative when your starting point is no dental care whatsoever. Your teeth are tools as much as they are body parts. You use them to crack nuts, tear meat, hold things while your hands are busy, and generally treat them like organic pliers. This abuse, combined with a diet full of gritty bread and coarse food, means your teeth are worn down, cracked, and generally falling apart by your 20s. There are no toothbrushes, but some people have figured out that chewing on fibrous twigs can help clean teeth. Frayed sticks from birch or oak trees are rubbed against teeth to remove food particles and plaque. It's not effective, but it's something, and in the Iron Age, something is usually better than nothing. Toothpaste doesn't exist, but some cultures use abrasive powders made from crushed shells, ground bones, or pumice stone. These substances remove plaque and food particles, but they also remove tooth enamel, accelerating the decay process. Using ancient toothpaste is like sandblasting your teeth. It works in the short term, but causes long-term damage. By your 30s, your mouth is a graveyard of broken, rotting teeth. Cavities are universal, gum disease is rampant, and tooth loss is inevitable. People accept dental pain as a normal part of aging, like grey hair or wrinkles. The lucky ones lose their teeth quickly and learn to gum their food. The unlucky ones suffer through years of chronic pain from infected teeth that won't fall out. Tooth extraction is performed by anyone brave enough to try, using whatever tools are available. Blacksmiths, barbers, and healers all moonlight as dentists, using pliers, hooks, and brute force to remove problematic teeth. There's no anesthesia except alcohol, no antibiotics to prevent infection, and no understanding of proper surgical techniques. Dental abscesses are common and frequently fatal. Infected teeth can cause blood poisoning, brain infections, and heart problems. What starts as a simple toothache can become a death sentence within days. People die from dental problems that could be easily treated today, but in the Iron Age, dental pain is just another way the universe tries to kill you. Bad breath is universal and overwhelming. Everyone has halitosis, from rotting teeth, infected gums, and whatever died in their mouth during the night. Social interactions happen at arm's length, not because of social conventions, but because getting too close to someone's mouth is a sensory assault that can cause nausea. Tooth wear from grinding grain creates flat, worn surfaces that are painful to chew on. Many people develop temporomandibular joint problems from the constant grinding motion required to eat Iron Age food. Jaw pain, clicking joints, and difficulty opening the mouth are common problems that persist until death. Some cultures try to improve dental health through diet. Eating certain herbs, avoiding sweets, or chewing specific plants are folk remedies that occasionally work, but more often don't. The concept of dental hygiene is understood in theory but impossible to implement in practice given the limitations of Iron Age technology and knowledge. Children's teeth are often better than adults simply because they haven't been exposed to the grinding, abrasive diet for as long. But child mortality from dental infections is high, and surviving childhood often means accepting a lifetime of dental problems. The wealthy might have slightly better dental health due to softer foods and access to imported remedies, but even they struggle with tooth decay and gum disease. Rich people just suffer in more comfort while their teeth fall out. Chapter 6. Working for the Overlords. Time to go to work, and your Iron Age job is exactly what you'd expect from a civilization that's learned to make better weapons but hasn't figured out workers' rights, safety regulations, or the concept that human beings deserve to be treated with basic dignity. If you're a farmer, which you probably are since 90% of the population works in agriculture, your job is to grow food for other people while hoping there's enough left over to keep you alive. You work land that belongs to a lord, king, or wealthy landowner who takes most of what you produce in exchange for the privilege of not being killed by his soldiers. Your tools are better than Bronze Age equipment. Iron plows cut deeper, iron sickles cut cleaner, and iron hoes last longer. But they're still primitive by any reasonable standard. Your plow is pulled by oxen or horses that you can't afford to feed properly, so they're weak, sickly, and likely to die during the busiest part of the growing season. The workday begins before dawn and ends after dark. There are no breaks, no lunch hours, and no weekends. You work through pain, illness, and exhaustion, because stopping work means starving. Farming is backbreaking labor that involves bending, lifting, and carrying heavy loads all day, every day, for months at a time. Weather is your enemy. Too much rain floods your crops, too little rain causes drought, and extreme weather events can destroy months of work in hours. There's no crop insurance, no disaster relief, and no government programs to help farmers recover from natural disasters. If your crops fail, you starve. If you're not a farmer, maybe you're a craftsman, a blacksmith, carpenter, or weaver. These jobs are slightly better paid, but much more dangerous. Blacksmiths work with fire, hot metal, and toxic fumes all day, developing lung problems and suffering frequent burns. Carpenters use sharp tools and work with heavy materials that can crush or maim. Weavers develop repetitive strain injuries and eye problems from close work in poor light. Mining is a death sentence with extra steps. Iron ore has to be dug from the ground by men working in tunnels that regularly collapse, flood, or fill with poisonous gases. Miners develop lung diseases from inhaling dust, suffer frequent accidents from cave-ins and equipment failures, and die young from the accumulated effects of working in conditions that would be illegal today. Women work just as hard as men, but get paid less and have fewer rights. If you're a woman, you're likely spinning thread, weaving cloth, or working in the fields, while also managing children, cooking, and handling household tasks. There's no concept of work-life balance because work and life are the same thing. Children start working as soon as they can walk. A 5-year-old might be herding geese, a 7-year-old might be helping with harvest, and a 10-year-old is doing adult work at child wages. Education is for rich people. Poor children learn trades by doing them until they're skilled enough to do them better. Working conditions are dangerous and unregulated. There are no safety standards, no protective equipment, and no compensation for workplace injuries. If you're hurt on the job, you're out of work until you heal, assuming you do heal. Many workplace injuries result in permanent disability or death. Your employer has absolute power over your working conditions, wages, and treatment. There are no unions, no labor laws, and no recourse if you're treated badly. Complaining about working conditions is grounds for dismissal, and being dismissed often means starving. The pay is subsistence at best. You work for food, shelter, and basic survival needs. Money exists, but mostly circulates among the wealthy. Poor people deal in barter, trading labor for goods and services. The concept of saving money for the future is meaningless when you're never sure where your next meal is coming from. Chapter 7. Weather, nature's ongoing assault on human dignity. Let's discuss Iron Age climate control, which is to say, you're completely helpless against weather patterns that seem designed by meteorological sadists with unlimited imagination and a personal grudge against human comfort. Winter in the Iron Age is a months-long siege where cold, darkness, and scarcity team up to see how many people they can kill before spring arrives. Your house has no insulation, no central heating, and no glass windows. Heat comes from a fire that burns wood, charcoal, or dried animal dung, filling your house with smoke because chimney technology is still being perfected by trial and error. The cold penetrates everything. It seeps through walls, rises from the ground, and descends from the ceiling. Your breath forms clouds that freeze on your blankets, and ice forms on the inside of your walls. Frostbite is common, but people just accept that losing feeling in their fingers and toes is part of winter survival. Fuel is expensive and hard to find. Wood has to be cut, seasoned, and stored, which requires time, tools, and land access that many people don't have. Charcoal is more efficient, but costs money. Dried dung burns poorly and smells terrible, but it's often the only fuel available. People ration heat like it's made of gold, which it might as well be. Summer brings different miseries. Your house becomes a stone and wood oven that bakes you slowly throughout the day and radiates heat back at you all night. There's no air conditioning, no fans, and no effective ventilation. You sweat through your clothes, but you can't remove them because sunburn will kill you and social norms require coverage. The heat brings insects in overwhelming numbers. Mosquitoes, flies, gnats, and other biting creatures descend in clouds that make outdoor work nearly impossible. They carry diseases, cause infections, and make life miserable for everyone. There's no insect repellent, no screens, and no escape from the constant buzzing and biting. Spring flooding is an annual disaster. Rivers overflow their banks, washing away crops, houses, and entire communities. Floodwater is contaminated with sewage, animal waste, and decomposing organic matter. Diseases spread rapidly in flood conditions, and many people die from waterborne illnesses even if they survive the initial flooding. Autumn storms can destroy months of work in hours. Hail ruins crops, wind destroys buildings, and early freezes kill harvests before they can be gathered. There's no weather prediction, no storm warnings, and no preparation beyond hoping for the best and praying to whatever gods might be listening. Drought is a slow-motion disaster that can last for years. Rivers dry up, wells fail, and crops wither in the fields. Livestock die, food stores are depleted, and entire populations migrate in search of water and food. There are no reservoirs, no irrigation systems, and no drought relief programs. Extreme weather events, tornadoes, hurricanes, blizzards, can wipe out entire communities overnight. There's no warning system, no emergency services, and no disaster relief. You go to bed in your house and wake up in a pile of wreckage, assuming you wake up at all. Seasonal affective disorder wasn't recognized as a medical condition, but seasonal death syndrome was a very real problem. People planned their lives around surviving the next weather extreme, and many didn't succeed. Winter killed the weak, summer killed the overworked, and spring flooding killed the unlucky. Weather determines everything: what you eat, how you dress, where you live, and how long you live. You're completely at the mercy of natural forces that don't care about human survival and seem actively hostile to human comfort. Chapter 8. Water, the liquid lottery of death. Time for hydration, and water in the Iron Age is like playing Russian roulette with a 6-shooter that's loaded with 5 different diseases and 1 bullet. Every drink is a gamble, but you need water to survive, so you roll the dice and hope your immune system is stronger than whatever's swimming in your cup. Your water supply comes from sources that would make a modern public health official weep. Rivers that serve as sewers, wells that double as garbage dumps, and cisterns that collect rainwater, along with whatever was on the roof when it rained. The concept of water treatment is limited to let it sit until the big chunks settle to the bottom. Rivers are particularly nasty. They're slow-moving collections of human waste, animal droppings, industrial runoff from metalworking, and whatever dead things have washed downstream. The water is brown, smells like a swamp, and has a texture that suggests it's more ecosystem than liquid. Drinking river water is like volunteering to be a host for every parasite in the watershed. Wells are supposed to be cleaner, but they're often contaminated by seepage from nearby latrines, or they've been polluted by the bucket, rope, or occasional dead animal that fell in. Many wells are shared by entire communities, so whatever diseases your neighbors have, you're about to share. Well, water might be clearer than river water, but clarity doesn't mean safety. Water storage is a constant challenge. Clay pots develop cracks that let bacteria in and water out. Wooden barrels rot and leak. Metal containers are expensive and rare. Without refrigeration, stored water becomes a breeding ground for bacteria, algae, and various microscopic creatures that see your water supply as a luxury resort. Some people try to improve water quality by adding wine or vinegar, which does kill some bacteria, but also creates a drink that tastes like someone marinated leather in grape juice. Others try filtering water through sand or cloth, which removes some particles, but doesn't address the bacterial contamination that's actually dangerous. Beer and wine are safer alternatives because the alcohol kills some microorganisms, but they come with their own problems. The alcohol content is usually low, but drinking fermented beverages all day leads to chronic dehydration and a population that's slightly intoxicated most of the time. Children drink watered-down beer because it's safer than pure water, which tells you everything you need to know about water quality. Waterborne diseases are the leading cause of death in Iron Age communities. Cholera can kill you in hours through dehydration from constant vomiting and diarrhea. Dysentery causes bloody diarrhea that can last for weeks. Typhoid fever gives you high temperatures, severe headaches, and abdominal pain that can lead to death if you're not strong enough to fight it off. Parasitic infections are universal. Everyone has intestinal worms, liver flukes, and other creatures living in their digestive systems. These parasites compete with their hosts for nutrients, cause anemia and malnutrition, and can cause organ damage that leads to death. Deworming involves herbal remedies that sometimes work, but more often don't. The wealthy might have access to better water sources in deeper wells, imported water, or water that's been boiled for cooking. But even rich people die from waterborne diseases because bacteria don't respect social class. Having money means you might die more comfortably, but you'll still die. Bathing with contaminated water is almost as dangerous as drinking it. Open wounds become infected, skin conditions worsen, and people often get sicker from washing than they were before they tried to get clean. The concept of hygiene is understood in theory, but dangerous in practice. Children are especially vulnerable to waterborne diseases. Their immune systems can't handle the bacterial load, and diarrheal diseases are the leading cause of child mortality. Parents watch their children die from something that could be prevented with clean water, but clean water is rarer than gold and more precious than life. Chapter 9. Medicine. The art of dying slowly. Feeling sick? Time to visit your local healer, where Iron Age medicine combines the worst aspects of Bronze Age ignorance with new and improved ways to accidentally kill patients while trying to help them. Medical knowledge has advanced slightly, but advanced is relative when your starting point is everything is caused by evil spirits. Diagnosis in the Iron Age is based on the revolutionary four humours theory: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. Every illness is caused by an imbalance in these humours, which means treatment involves removing the excess humour through bloodletting, purging, or induced vomiting. The fact that these treatments often make people sicker is seen as proof that the humours are fighting back. Your healer might be a trained physician who studied the medical texts of ancient Greece and Rome, or they might be a local wise woman who knows which herbs are most likely to kill you quickly. Medical education involves memorizing ancient theories that are wrong, learning techniques that don't work, and developing the confidence to practice medicine despite having no idea what you're doing. Bloodletting is the cure for everything. Got a fever? You have too much blood, feeling dizzy? Too much blood, broken leg? Believe it or not, too much blood. The treatment involves cutting open veins with sharp instruments that haven't been sterilized, then draining blood into bowls while the patient lies there, hoping they don't bleed to death. Leeches are considered a sophisticated medical technology. These blood-sucking worms are applied to patients' skin, where they attach and drain blood while injecting anticoagulants that prevent clotting. The theory is that leeches remove bad blood, but the practice often involves trading one problem for several new ones, including infections and anemia. Surgery is performed with iron tools that are sharper than bronze but still haven't been properly sterilized. Surgeons understand basic anatomy but have no concept of germs, infection control, or proper surgical technique. Operations are performed in unsanitary conditions with no anesthesia except alcohol, and with success rates that make Russian roulette look like a safe bet. Pain management consists of alcohol, opium if you're wealthy enough to afford it, and biting on leather straps while hoping you pass out before the worst part. Anesthesia is a concept that won't be developed for another 1,000 years, so patients are expected to remain conscious during procedures that would require general anesthesia today. Pharmaceuticals are made from plants, animals, and minerals that may or may not have medicinal properties. Some herbal remedies actually work. Willow bark for pain, digitalis for heart problems, and certain molds that accidentally contain antibiotic properties. But most medicines are based on superstition, tradition, and the hope that something will work. Mental illness is treated as demonic possession, moral failing, or punishment from the gods. Treatments include exorcism, prayer, herbal remedies, and occasionally trepanation, drilling holes in the skull to release evil spirits. The success rate for these treatments is about what you'd expect from medieval psychiatry. Childbirth is still a death sentence for many women. Maternal mortality rates are high, and infant mortality is even higher. Midwives have practical experience but limited medical knowledge. Complications during birth often result in the death of mother, child, or both, and there's little that can be done to prevent or treat obstetric emergencies. Infectious diseases are treated with remedies that range from useless to actively harmful. Plague is treated with bloodletting and prayer. Tuberculosis is treated with fresh air and hope. Malaria is treated with herbs that sometimes help, but more often don't. The concept of contagion is understood in theory but not in practice. Preventive medicine is limited to avoiding obviously dangerous situations and maintaining the favor of the gods. Vaccination is still 1,500 years in the future, antibiotics are even further away, and basic hygiene is more superstition than science. People hope to stay healthy rather than expecting medical treatment to cure them when they get sick. If you're seriously injured or become gravely ill, your best hope is that you die quickly before the medical treatment kills you. Recovery is possible, but depends more on luck and natural healing than on anything the healers can do for you. Chapter 10. Food. The continuing saga of culinary Russian roulette. Dinner time in the Iron Age, where food safety has advanced from hope it doesn't kill you to hope it kills you quickly if it's going to kill you. Improvements in agriculture, storage and trade have made food more abundant and varied, but also more creative in its methods of causing illness and death. Let's start with the improvements. Iron tools make farming more efficient, so there's generally more food available. Trade networks bring exotic ingredients from distant lands, so the wealthy can enjoy spices, fruits, and other luxuries that previous generations never imagined. Food storage has improved with better containers and preservation techniques, but improvement is relative. Your grain is still stored in containers that provide minimal protection from rodents, insects, and moisture. Rats and mice treat your food supplies like an all-you-can-eat buffet, leaving behind droppings, urine, and whatever diseases they're carrying. Weevils and other insects burrow into grain, lay eggs, and turn your food into a protein-rich nightmare of insect larvae. Bread is made from flour that's been ground on stone mills, so every loaf contains enough grit to wear down your teeth. The flour might be adulterated with sawdust, chalk, or other filler materials to increase volume and profit. Bakers are notorious for cheating customers by adding cheap ingredients and selling underweight loaves. Meat preservation has improved but is still dangerous. Salting, smoking, and drying can preserve meat for months, but the process requires expensive salt and proper techniques that many people don't understand. Improperly preserved meat develops botulism, which can kill you in hours. Fresh meat spoils quickly and often carries parasites that cause intestinal worms and other health problems. Dairy products are still a gamble. Milk spoils within hours. Cheese develops dangerous molds, and butter becomes rancid quickly. Most dairy is consumed fermented or aged, which kills some bacteria but creates new opportunities for food poisoning. Cheese is often made in unsanitary conditions and aged in caves where it competes with naturally occurring bacteria and fungi. Fish and seafood are available fresh only near water sources. Inland communities rely on salted or dried fish, which is often oversalted to prevent spoilage. Fish can carry parasites that cause serious health problems, and spoiled fish produces toxins that can cause paralysis or death. There's no refrigeration, so fish has to be eaten quickly or preserved immediately. Vegetables are grown in soil fertilized with human and animal waste, which means every carrot comes preloaded with intestinal parasites and bacterial infections. Root vegetables are safer because they're usually cooked, but leafy greens are essentially salad bars for every parasite in the area. Without pesticides, vegetables share space with insects, their eggs, and whatever diseases they're carrying. Fruits are luxury items that spoil quickly and often contain unwanted protein in the form of insect larvae. Apples have worms, cherries have flies, and most tree fruits are infested with some form of pest. Honey is still the only sweetener available, and it's expensive enough that most people never taste anything truly sweet. Wild berries are available seasonally but compete with birds, animals, and various forms of mold. Food adulteration is common and creative. Spices are mixed with sawdust, flour is cut with chalk or clay, and wine is watered down or mixed with cheaper ingredients. There are no food safety regulations, no quality standards, and no recourse if you're sold adulterated food. Buyers are expected to inspect their purchases carefully and accept responsibility for whatever they consume. Cooking methods have improved with better pots, pans, and stoves, but food safety is still a matter of luck and experience. Temperatures are judged by sight and smell, timing is estimated, and proper cooking is whatever doesn't cause immediate illness. Undercooked meat carries parasites, overcooked food loses nutrients, and improperly cooked grains can contain toxic compounds. Food poisoning is a regular occurrence that people plan for rather than try to prevent. Botulism from preserved meat, salmonella from eggs, and various bacterial infections from spoiled food are just part of the dining experience. Most families have someone dealing with digestive issues at any given time, and severe food poisoning can kill within days. Famine is still a constant threat despite agricultural improvements. One bad harvest, one disease affecting livestock, or one disruption in trade networks can cause widespread starvation. During famines, people eat bark, leather, and anything else that might contain calories. Social order breaks down as people compete for scarce resources, and previously unthinkable foods become acceptable out of desperation. Social class determines food quality, but even the wealthy deal with spoilage, contamination, and foodborne illness. Rich people have more variety in their diet and can afford to discard questionable food, but they're still vulnerable to the same basic problems of food safety in an era without refrigeration or quality control. Malnutrition is common even among people who have enough food to eat. Diets are limited in variety and often lacking in essential nutrients. Vitamin deficiencies cause scurvy, rickets, and night blindness. Protein deficiency stunts growth and weakens immune systems. Iron deficiency causes anemia, which makes people weak and vulnerable to disease. Dining is a social activity that involves sharing food, utensils, and whatever diseases people are carrying. Everyone eats from common bowls, drinks from shared cups, and uses their hands to handle food. Personal hygiene is limited, so meals are opportunities for disease transmission as much as nourishment. Chapter 11. Religion, Divine Protection. Racket. Time for spiritual fulfillment, where Iron Age religion has evolved from Bronze Age god-placating into a sophisticated system of divine bureaucracy that's more complex but no less terrifying. The gods have organized themselves into pantheons, developed specializations, and created elaborate hierarchies that mirror human political systems, except with more human sacrifice and less job security. Your spiritual life revolves around multiple gods who each have specific areas of responsibility and personal vendettas against humanity. There's a god of war who demands blood sacrifice, a goddess of harvest who requires first fruits, a god of smithing who expects metal offerings, and dozens of other deities who all want something from you, and none of whom seem particularly interested in your personal happiness. Religious obligations are complex and expensive. You need to know which god to worship for which purpose, when to make offerings, how to perform rituals correctly, and what the consequences are for getting it wrong. The gods are portrayed as powerful but petty beings who take personal offense at religious errors and punish entire communities for individual mistakes. Temples are massive construction projects that require enormous resources and human labor. Workers die building monuments to gods who seem perpetually unsatisfied with the results. The beautiful temples and religious complexes are built with taxes extracted from people who can barely afford to feed themselves, but refusing to support temple construction is blasphemy punishable by death. Priests have evolved into a professional class with extensive training, political power, and economic influence. They control access to divine favor, interpret omens and prophecies, and demand payment for their services. The priestly class lives well while their followers struggle, claiming that their comfort is necessary for proper religious service. Human sacrifice has become more systematic and ritualized. Different gods require different types of sacrifice: warriors for the war god, children for the harvest goddess, and criminals for the god of justice. Being selected for sacrifice is supposedly an honor, but people rarely volunteer for the opportunity, suggesting that divine honor is less appealing than continued existence. Religious festivals are elaborate affairs that consume enormous resources and require community participation. These celebrations involve feasting, drinking, and ritual activities that are mandatory for all citizens. The festivals are supposed to ensure divine favor, but they often leave communities economically exhausted and vulnerable to attack from neighbors who didn't waste resources on parties for the gods. Afterlife beliefs have become more elaborate and terrifying. The underworld is described in vivid detail as a place of punishment for those who displease the gods, fail to perform proper rituals, or simply have the bad luck to die during divine displeasure. The afterlife is not a reward for good behavior, but a continuation of earthly suffering under direct, divine supervision. Religious law is increasingly complex and covers every aspect of daily life. Dietary restrictions, behavioral codes, ritual requirements, and moral obligations are all enforced by religious authorities with the power to impose punishments ranging from fines to execution. Breaking religious law is not just a crime against the gods, but a threat to community safety that must be eliminated. Mystery religions offer exclusive access to divine knowledge and salvation for those who can afford initiation fees and maintain secrecy about religious practices. These cults promise special protection and afterlife benefits, but require complete devotion, and often involve dangerous initiation rituals that can result in death or permanent injury. Omens and prophecy guide major decisions at every level of society. Priests interpret bird flights, animal behavior, weather patterns, and astronomical events to predict future events and divine will. Military campaigns, agricultural decisions, and political policies are based on supernatural interpretations rather than practical considerations. Religious education involves memorizing prayers, learning ritual procedures, and understanding the complex relationships between different gods. Independent thinking about religious matters is discouraged through social pressure and legal penalties. Faith is not a personal choice but a community obligation enforced through peer pressure and divine threats. The gods provide some comfort in an otherwise harsh existence, but they extract a high price in terms of time, resources, and personal freedom. Religion offers explanations for suffering and hope for divine intervention, but it also creates additional sources of anxiety and demands that compete with basic survival needs. Chapter 12. Women in the Iron Age. Same game. Harder difficulty. If you thought being a man in the Iron Age was challenging, try experiencing it as a woman. All the same dangers, diseases, and deprivations, plus the added excitement of legal invisibility, systematic oppression, and the constant threat of death in childbirth. Women in the Iron Age face life on expert mode with no cheat codes and no respawn options. From birth, girls are valued less than boys and treated as future property rather than individuals. Female infanticide is common when resources are limited and families need to choose which children to raise. Girls who survive childhood face restricted opportunities, limited education, and the knowledge that their primary value lies in their reproductive capacity and domestic labor. Marriage is an economic transaction arranged by families for financial and political benefit. Girls are married young, often before puberty, to men they've never met. Your opinion about the arrangement is neither sought nor valued. The bride price is negotiated like any other business deal, and you're essentially sold to your husband's family like valuable livestock. Once married, you become legal property with fewer rights than domestic animals. Your husband owns you, your children, and everything you produce. You cannot own land, make contracts, or represent yourself in legal proceedings. If your husband dies, you might be inherited by his relatives, sold to pay debts, or left to survive on family charity. Childbirth is a death sentence you have to keep rolling dice on throughout your fertile years. Maternal mortality rates are catastrophic. Between 15 to 25% of women die in childbirth or from complications afterward. There's no prenatal care, no skilled medical assistance, and no understanding of sterile technique during delivery. You give birth attended by midwives whose training consists of having survived their own births and watched other women die. If you survive childbirth, you get to repeat the experience regularly. Birth control is limited to herbal remedies that sometimes work, withdrawal methods that rarely work, and prayer that never works. Women spend their fertile years either pregnant, nursing, or recovering from childbirth. Large families are common, but so are families where half the children die and the mother dies young. Work is constant and uncompensated. Women handle household management, food preparation, textile production, childcare, elder care, and often agricultural work as well. You work from dawn to dusk with no breaks, no help, and no recognition. There are no labor-saving devices, no assistance, and no acknowledgement that women's work has economic value. Education is limited to domestic skills passed down through oral tradition. Most women are illiterate and innumerate, dependent on men for any interaction with the wider world. Formal education is reserved for men and the occasional wealthy woman who might learn to read for religious purposes. Women's intellectual capacity is considered inferior by nature. Legal protection is minimal to non-existent. Rape is treated as property damage against your father or husband, rather than a crime against you. Domestic violence is accepted as a husband's right to discipline his property. Murder of women by their male relatives is often ignored or lightly punished if there were reasons, like adultery or disobedience. Economic independence is nearly impossible. Women cannot own businesses, inherit property equally with male relatives, or control their own earnings. Any money you make belongs to your husband or father. Your economic security depends entirely on maintaining the favor of men who view you as useful but replaceable. Religious roles offer limited power within strict boundaries. Women can serve as priestesses for female deities, but they're always subordinate to male religious authorities. Female religious power is tolerated when it serves male interests and suppressed when it threatens male authority. Even powerful priestesses rule at the sufferance of male religious hierarchies. Widowhood brings new dangers and vulnerabilities. You might be forced to marry your deceased husband's brother, sold to pay his debts, or left to survive on charity from relatives who see you as a burden. Widows without male protection are vulnerable to exploitation, abuse, and economic destitution. The few women who achieve power do so through exceptional circumstances. Royal birth, religious calling, or survival skills so impressive they cannot be ignored. But even powerful women face constant challenges to their legitimacy and rule at the sufferance of male authorities who can withdraw their support at any time. Healthcare for women is limited and often dangerous. Medical knowledge about female anatomy is minimal and often wrong. Treatments for women's health problems are based on superstition and male theories about female inferiority. Women are expected to suffer in silence and accept pain as natural punishment for Eve's sins. In summary, being a woman in the Iron Age means facing all the dangers and hardships of ancient life, while also navigating a social system designed to control your body, limit your options, and deny your humanity. You survive not because the system supports you, but because women are remarkably resilient creatures who find ways to endure even in systems designed to destroy them. Chapter 13: Violence and Justice. The Iron Age Legal System. Welcome to Iron Age Justice, where the legal system has evolved from Bronze Age might makes right into a sophisticated framework of laws, punishments, and procedures that are more organized but no less brutal. Law and order exist, but they're designed to protect property and maintain social hierarchies rather than ensure fairness or protect individual rights. Legal codes have become more complex and comprehensive. The 12 Tables of Rome, Germanic tribal laws, and Celtic legal traditions all provide detailed rules for social behavior, property rights, and criminal punishment. These codes are improvements over arbitrary justice, but they explicitly recognize social classes and prescribe different punishments for the same crimes depending on the social status of perpetrator and victim. Courts and legal procedures have developed to handle disputes and criminal cases. Judges, juries, and legal advocates participate in trials that follow established procedures. This sounds civilized until you realize that legal representation is expensive, evidence standards are primitive, and justice depends heavily on social connections and financial resources. Trial by ordeal is still common for serious crimes. Accused individuals might be required to carry hot iron, walk through fire, or survive being thrown into water. The theory is that the gods will protect the innocent, but the practice often results in death or permanent injury, regardless of guilt. Surviving an ordeal proves innocence. Dying proves guilt posthumously. Criminal punishment is public entertainment designed to deter crime through terror. Executions, floggings, and mutilations are performed in front of crowds who treat them like sporting events. Children are brought to watch criminals being tortured to death as part of their education in social norms and consequences. The death penalty is prescribed for numerous crimes beyond murder. Theft, adultery, blasphemy, treason, and various other offenses can result in execution. Methods include crucifixion, burning, drowning, stoning, and creative combinations designed to maximize suffering and public spectacle. Quick death is reserved for the wealthy who can afford it. Physical punishment is standard for non-capital crimes. Flogging, branding, and mutilation are used to mark criminals and deter future offenses. Lost hands identify thieves, cut tongues mark liars, and various other mutilations serve as permanent reminders of criminal behavior. These punishments often result in infection, disability, or death. Imprisonment is rare because it's expensive to maintain prisoners. Most criminals are punished immediately through physical means, executed or enslaved. Prisons exist mainly for holding accused individuals awaiting trial or execution, not as long-term punishment. The concept of rehabilitation through imprisonment is unknown. Slavery is legal and common, often used as punishment for crimes or debt. Slaves have no rights and can be bought, sold, tortured, or killed at their owner's discretion. Children can be born into slavery, and entire populations can be enslaved through military conquest. Slavery is considered a normal part of economic and social organization. Domestic violence is legal and expected. Husbands have the right to discipline wives and children through physical punishment, including severe beatings. Women who fight back against abusive husbands face legal punishment for attacking their superiors. Children who disobey parents can be legally killed in some jurisdictions. Blood feuds and vengeance cycles are legally recognized methods of conflict resolution. If someone wrongs your family, you have the right and obligation to seek revenge. This creates multi-generational conflicts that can destroy entire communities. Legal systems attempt to regulate blood feuds but rarely eliminate them entirely. Military justice is even more brutal than civilian law. Soldiers who desert, disobey orders, or show cowardice face execution or severe punishment. Military commanders have absolute authority over their troops and can impose any punishment they consider appropriate. Collective punishment is common, where entire units are punished for individual failures. International law consists of treaties and agreements that last only as long as both parties find them beneficial. Warfare is regulated by custom and religious law, but war crimes are not recognized as a legal concept. Armies routinely engage in rape, pillage, and massacre of civilian populations as standard military practice. Women, children, and slaves have limited legal rights and cannot represent themselves in court. Legal proceedings are conducted by and for adult, free males. Women's testimony is worth less than men's, and slaves cannot testify against free individuals. Legal protection depends on social status and male guardianship. If you're accused of a crime, your best defense is wealth, social connections, or the ability to flee before trial. Guilt or innocence are less important than your ability to navigate the legal system and survive whatever punishment is imposed. Justice is not blind. It's completely focused on maintaining social order and protecting the interests of the powerful. Chapter 14. Death and Disease. The Iron Age Collection. Time to explore the Iron Age's impressive catalogue of ways to die, which has expanded significantly from previous eras thanks to urbanization, trade networks, and improved technology that's made killing more efficient while keeping healing just as ineffective. Death comes in more varieties than ever before, and life expectancy remains optimistically short. Infectious diseases have become more diverse and deadly thanks to increased population density and trade connections. Cities are breeding grounds for epidemics that can kill thousands in weeks. Plague, smallpox, measles, and influenza spread rapidly through crowded urban areas where people live in close quarters with poor sanitation and no understanding of disease transmission. Malaria remains a major killer, especially in areas with standing water and poor drainage. The disease causes recurring fevers that gradually weaken victims until they die from complications or secondary infections. Mosquito control doesn't exist, and the connection between mosquitoes and disease won't be understood for another 1,000 years. Tuberculosis is endemic in crowded urban areas. The disease spreads through airborne droplets and slowly destroys the lungs over months or years. Victims waste away while coughing blood, and the disease often spreads to entire families living in close quarters. Treatment is limited to fresh air and prayer, neither of which is particularly effective. Gastrointestinal diseases are universal due to poor sanitation and contaminated water supplies. Cholera, dysentery, and typhoid fever kill through dehydration and depletion of essential nutrients. These diseases can kill within days or drag on for weeks, causing severe suffering before death or recovery. Parasitic infections are assumed to be normal parts of human existence. Everyone has intestinal worms, liver flukes, and other internal parasites that compete for nutrients and cause chronic health problems. Some parasites cause anemia, others damage organs, and a few cause brain infections that lead to seizures and death. Injuries that would be minor today are frequently fatal in the Iron Age. Small cuts become infected and lead to sepsis. Broken bones that don't heal properly cause lifelong disability and increased vulnerability to other health problems. Burns from cooking fires, metalworking, or warfare often become infected and kill through systemic infection. Childbirth and infant mortality remain catastrophically high. Roughly half of all children die before age 5 from disease, malnutrition, accidents, or birth complications. Women face a 15 to 25% chance of dying in each childbirth, and many survivors suffer permanent injuries that affect their health for life. Occupational diseases are common and accepted as normal parts of working life. Miners develop lung diseases from dust inhalation. Metal workers suffer from lead and mercury poisoning. Farmers are injured by animals and equipment. Soldiers die not just in battle, but from infected wounds and epidemic diseases in military camps. Malnutrition weakens everyone's immune system and makes every disease more dangerous. Vitamin deficiencies cause scurvy, rickets, and night blindness. Protein deficiency stunts growth and development. Iron deficiency causes anemia that makes people weak and vulnerable to infection. Even minor illnesses can become fatal in malnourished populations. Mental illness is misunderstood and often untreated. Depression, anxiety, and post-traumatic stress from warfare or trauma are seen as moral failings or supernatural afflictions. Severe mental illness is treated through confinement, exorcism, or abandonment. Many mentally ill individuals die from neglect or violence. Natural disasters can kill thousands and leave survivors vulnerable to disease and starvation. Earthquakes, floods, droughts, and volcanic eruptions destroy crops, contaminate water supplies, and disrupt food distribution. There's no disaster relief, emergency medical care, or government assistance for disaster victims. Epidemic diseases can wipe out entire communities. When new diseases are introduced through trade or military contact, populations with no immunity can be decimated. The plague of Cyprian, various influenza outbreaks, and other epidemics kill significant percentages of affected populations. Violence and warfare are constant threats. Soldiers die in battle, but civilians also face death from raiding parties, sieges, and military occupation. Bandits, pirates, and other criminals prey on travelers and isolated communities. Personal disputes often escalate to deadly violence in cultures that value honor and revenge. Suicide becomes more common as life becomes more complex and stressful. People facing slavery, torture, execution, or unbearable chronic pain often choose death on their own terms. Suicide methods include poison, hanging, drowning, or deliberately provoking fatal conflicts. Death in the Iron Age is random, frequent, and often preventable with modern knowledge and technology. You can do everything right and still die from disease, accident, or violence. Life is a constant gamble where death is always favored to win, and the only question is when your luck runs out. The randomness of death is perhaps most psychologically devastating. Families are routinely destroyed by disease, accidents, or violence. Communities lose significant portions of their population to epidemics or disasters. Death is so common that people develop elaborate rituals and beliefs to cope with constant loss. But somehow, despite everything, people continue to reproduce, build communities, and try to create better lives for their children. The Iron Age represents humanity's stubborn refusal to accept that life has to be short, brutal, and meaningless, even when all available evidence suggests otherwise. Chapter 15: The Iron Age Reality Check. So there you have it, life in the Iron Age, where humanity made significant technological and social advances while somehow managing